Welcome to another firm Brownbag 2.0 session. As you know from now, the purpose of these sessions is to share best practices, lessons learned, and stories of impact among our trust funds at the bank. Today, we have two additional trust funds that will be presenting. The first one is from the Human Capital, Youth and Skills Development Department, or AHHD. And the fund that they'll be presenting is the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Trust Fund. Three people will be presenting today. The first is going to be Tapira Jeffrey, who's going to give an overview of the Jobs for Youth strategy. Then we'll be joined by Henriette Anikot, who is the coordinator of the YEI fund for short, and has 12 years of project management experience, and prior to joining the bank, was active in innovation for poverty action. And finally, Charles Mbutia, who is an M&E consultant for the firm and designs, coordinates, and implements M&E strategies for the fund, will be presenting. So without further ado, I'll let Jeffrey Tapira present an overview of the Jobs for Youth strategy, and then Henriette, you can begin the presentation of the fund. Thank you.
As you know, the bank adopted the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy. And this strategy primarily looks at three things. The first is to maximize the employment outcome of every bank operation. The second is to support innovation in as far as scaling up solutions that have proven that they can create jobs for young people. And there we have a series of flagship programs that the bank itself has designed, but we also support a number of other programs that have demonstrated their capacity to create jobs on the continent. The third aspect, which is critical for this trust fund, is the issue of financing. So under financing, Roderick, we have two aspects. One is the grant vehicle, which is what this trust fund is about. The other is, of course, the various investments and programs that we do that facilitate loans to clients for on lending to the SME sector. I just want to focus on this trust fund on the intro, that it is very, very critical for us in terms of accelerating the implementation of the Bank Group Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy. It has enabled us to support the development of bank operations that are targeting young people in terms of job creation. It has also enabled us to open up for innovative programs and projects from other partners on the continent that are willing to work very closely with the bank on job creation. So it's a very, very strategic fund for us. We have a number of donors that are behind it. And we think that we have started very well, but along the lines, we have also learned quite a lot. And I want to allow my colleagues, Charles and Henriette, to share that experience with you this morning. So I'm not gonna take so much time. I just wanted to give you a quick intro and situate this trust fund for you. But for further information on the strategy and where we are, you can always contact us after this. So Roderick, I think let's get straight into it. Let's allow Henriette and Charles to share the experience that we have had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tapira. Henriette?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity to presenting about the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Multi-Donor Trust Fund, and thank you to Tapira for the introduction. So about the table of content, it will be quite a standard one that we use for the Brownbag presentation. So I will go straight into the overview of the fund. So it's main grant vehicles supporting the implementation of the Job for Youth in Africa strategy. We have it's supported by 5 donors from Europe, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Italy. So far, they have committed up to $39 million of dollars, some of which is already paid, and then it's committed for the coming years. And we have a lifespan of 2017 to 2025, which aligns with the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy lifespan 2016 to 2025. And we only deliver grants to implement 3 main types of activities: business development services, which we call BDS, research and studies, and enabling environment. We work in Africa, but we have a focus on low-income countries, countries in transition, and countries considered as a hotspot of economic migration. In terms of partners, on the left, you see our 5 donors that I just mentioned. And on the right, you see we have a large variety of implementation partners. We can work directly with a bank department or bank country offices. So for example, we've been supporting the Agri-Pitch competition prize implemented by the Enable Youth program of the bank. We've been supporting also the SME showcase at the last year Africa Investment Forum. And we work closely with the Innovation Lab, which is a flagship program of the bank, also implemented by the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy. We have the same objectives, but using different means. We also work directly with enterprise support organizations, such as the Tony Elimulu Foundation or the Africa Guarantee Fund. We work with government. You see the logos of the government of Ghana, Mali, and Guinea, where we are implementing enabling environment project. We will soon develop a feasibility study with government of Nigeria, the Federal Ministry of Finance. And so when projects are implemented by the YEI MDTF or by bank project, we also contract directly consulting firms sometimes to execute those projects. So for example, the Mahindra Consulting Engineers is a consulting firm conducting the feasibility study for the AH4 department, the Agricultural Finance and Rural Infrastructure Development Department, who is doing a feasibility study for the special agro-processing zones in Kenya and in Uganda. So that gives you an overview of the type of partners we can work with. Now, what are the objectives of the funds? So in terms of outcomes and impact, as we reflect them in our fund theory of change, we look to achieve 4 main outcomes. One is access to finance. SMEs and startups, there is a huge financing gap for those SMEs and startups, and in particular when they are youth-led or women-led. Youth have less access to collateral. They usually have less capital because they are youth. They don't have too much savings. They have also less access to network. And they are perceived as bank has less experience. So overall, youth-led startups and MSMEs are perceived as risky by the bank. So they have a really hard time to access loans, but also to attract investments. So we aim to increase their access to finance. The second one is business survival. Another challenge they face is a lack of capacity. You can be good technically to design product or services, but it doesn't mean you know how to manage a firm. It doesn't mean you know how to do your marketing, manage finance, build a team and manage human resources. So that's why building capacity of those young entrepreneurs is very important. And so build capacity coupled with access to finance will help to increase the survival rate of MSMEs and startups. Like the majority of MSMEs and startups will fail in the first 3 years after their creation. So the goal is to really help them to pass this difficult period so they can then grow their business. A third pillar, which is important, is enabling environment. It's important to work directly with MSMEs and startups, but if they don't grow in a conducive enabling environment, they will still struggle to grow. And so by enabling environment, we talk about guidelines in countries, policies, which help entrepreneurs to thrive. Specific examples are, for example, tax relief that can be implemented for a startup in the early years of starting the business. It can be a status for auto entrepreneurs so that they are less vulnerable and gives them like access to social benefits. It can be also one-stop shop to create your enterprise very quickly. So there is a couple of measures that country can implement to facilitate the growth of startup and MSMEs, so the micro, small and medium enterprise. And so we work directly with government to implement those policies, which will make a more favorable environment for business to start and grow. And finally, we also work with the quality design of bank projects. This is part of the integration in bank projects of a focus on the creations of jobs for youth. And so basically, jobs creation is very a transversal area, and any bank project could try to optimize the opportunities for jobs creation. So we fund research of feasibility studies, for example, to inform CSPs, country strategy papers, to help build project pipeline that will support SMEs. And also we can co-fund feasibility studies to optimize the potential for youth employment of bank projects. All these outcomes will lead to the impact of increased youth employment and employability. And it's directly contributing to the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy goals to create 25 million jobs for the youth, direct and indirect jobs, and to equip them with skills to enhance their employability. Now, so the type of activities we found to reach those outcomes are business development services. Here we work through enterprise support organization, what we call ESOs, and it includes accelerator, incubators, and by funding those type of organization, we enable them to expand their program when they build capacity of youth-led startup and MSMEs. Then I mentioned already the two types of areas. Those activities are directly linked to the outcomes. We provide technical assistance to government to be able to improve the policies and regulatory framework in their country. And we also fund feasibility studies and research studies to be able to improve the quality of bank projects, the design of the bank project. In terms of eligible beneficiaries, they very much depend of the component. So within BDS, the eligible beneficiaries are enterprise support organization, which I mentioned already. So the incubators and accelerators, they can be NGO, they can be foundation, they can be social businesses, and sometimes also they can be public entities such as chambers of commerce and industry or agencies for small and medium enterprise. All these organizations that support small businesses are eligible for funding. For enable environment, country government are eligible, but usually those projects are supported by bank country offices. They are the ones who are in the field directly in contact with the government. And so we expect a request letter from the government, and then the country office will help to write a proposal to the fund to implement a technical assistance project in the country. And then in terms of research and feasibility studies, either the YEI MDTF, we can contract ourselves firms to conduct research, or we will give grants to bank departments, such as the one I mentioned before, the AHFR department. They received a grant from the YEI MDTF, and so in turn they could contract Mahindra consulting firm to implement the feasibility study for the special agro-processing zones. Currently, we have a focus on 11 countries in East, West, and Southern Africa. They are the countries that you can see in blue on the map. It includes Ghana, Togo, Mali, Nigeria for West Africa, and Guinea as well. Then Zimbabwe and Malawi for Southern Africa, and then Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda for East Africa. That's the current focus. It doesn't mean we don't have projects elsewhere. This focus was agreed with donors in July of this year. So before that, we have approved projects in other countries. For example, we are preparing to go to the board for a project in the G5 Sahel in the context of recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. We aim at building economic resilience in those countries in parallel to the health project funded by the bank. And in the future as well, we might apply to fund projects in other countries, but it will be mostly in low-income countries, countries in transition, and countries hotspot of economic migration, and will request special approval from the donors. So it will be on a case-by-case basis. But basically, it will be important for those countries to show that they have a valid country strategy paper that include specific pillars on human capital, youth, and skills development. But otherwise, it will be easier on a regular basis to implement projects in those 11 focus countries. So access to trust fund funding. What I call internal and external means internal it's within the bank, and external is for partners outside of the bank. So bank projects, so bank department or country offices can apply within the three pillars. They can implement BDS projects, enabling environment project, or also apply for feasibility studies. And actually those three components are also related. So you can have a project that will both have a component of enabling environment and BDS, for example. So it's all linked, and it's a very holistic approach. And so for bank project, we launch call for proposals. We'll probably launch one within the end of the year. And so bank department and country offices can apply to those call for proposals. And usually it's when we need to build the pipeline for our project that we'll launch those calls. But in parallel, bank department can also send spontaneous application that we will review on a rolling basis. And those, it will really depend if this project aligns with our objectives and also if funding is available. But you can always reach out to find out if there is an opportunity. Then for external partners, we only accept external partners in the pillar business delivery services. And we don't accept spontaneous application. We would have too many, we could not manage it. So they can only apply to request for proposals. Sometimes it's request for grants, sometimes it's a procurement process, but it's always competitive. And so they have to wait for the bank to publish this request for proposal to apply for funding. In terms of governance, so the governance structure is guided by our fund operational guidelines, which are really the reference of what can be done or not. It starts with project amount. The minimum ticket size is $250,000. And for project between $250,000 and $1 million, first they will submit proposals. And then for the ones that are selected, we will invite them to develop a project concept note. The project concept note will be more or less developed depending on the amount of the project and the type of project. On this project concept note is developed, it must be cleared by the department management team. And so basically get clearance from our director. Once it's cleared, we'll submit it to the technical review committee of the fund for approval. The technical review committee includes key departments of the bank, such as procurement, finance, legal, firm, like resource mobilization, and then also technical departments such as private sector, strategy, or gender. For project above USD 1 million, after the proposal and the concept notes that must be cleared by the department management team, if they get clearance, then they will develop a full project appraisal report, which everyone who's been doing bank operation knows what it is. This project appraisal report will be submitted to the TRC for clearance, then to the oversight committee, which is a group of donors of the fund. And then it will be submitted to the board of directors on LOTB. So that's an overview of the governance structure of the fund. Now we're going to a track record to give you a few examples of projects we have. So here I will leave it to my colleague Charles, who is the M&E officer of the fund.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our presentation, the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Multi-Donor Trust Fund. So I take it forward from where Henriette has stopped, and I present on the track record and the impact and successful operations of the fund. So as it has explained, the fund has got 3 intervention areas, and these are the business development services, the research studies, and enabling environment. And so far, our track record is as follows. At the BDS component, we have 3 projects which are already complete, and these are the African Youth Agripreneur Forum or the AgriPitch competition of 2019. We also have another project which is complete, which is the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Program. And for example, through the TEF program, 1,000 youth-led startups were trained business BDS, business development services, and they were provided with grants to support their businesses. Another completed project by the fund is the Matchmaking event of 2019 with the Africa Investment Forum. And this was an entrepreneurial ventures showcase series. And through this project, the fund was able to support 20 MSMEs with high growth potential, and they were matched with relevant investors so that they could be able to bridge the investment gap between them and the investors. So the total cost of the completed project stood at 5.3 million US. And then the other category under the business development services, we have 3 projects which are ongoing. And here we are working with the African Guarantee Fund, and this project is aiming at 400 youth-led MSMEs in Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Togo, and Zimbabwe. As you can see that on the screen. So the other ongoing project is the AgriPitch event for 2020, and this one will be held virtually in the coming month of November. So this is somehow similar to what we had in 2019, but the theme is different for this year. So the other project that is ongoing is the Post-Africa versus Virus Challenge. And the fund is looking forward to support 20 youth-led ventures across the continent using one enterprise support organization. So the beauty about this project is that it's going to provide ventures with opportunities to build their tech and non-tech solutions to tackle some of the most pressing challenges which have been derived or felt from the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can see we are also trying to address the COVID-19 issues and finding solutions for the youth. So we got 3 projects which are at preparatory stage, and one of them we are looking at the way we can work with an enterprise support organization to support startups in Guinea, Benin, Togo, and this project will be there for 18 months. We have another project which is targeting the G5 Sahel, and the essence of this project in the G5 Sahel is to support the resumption or expansion of activities of young MSMEs in the face of the effects of COVID-19. So here the intention is to reach at least or more than 900 youths. As Henrik explained earlier, we have another project at preparatory level, which is the local content development program for youth-led and women in business, MSMEs, and this one is in Mozambique. So the total package for the projects which are at preparatory level is that amount of almost $6 million. In the other component of research studies, we have 3 ongoing projects. And remember, these 3 ongoing projects, as it has been indicated, the fund is involved in research studies activities. For one, we have the country diagnostic studies for the special agro-industrial processing zones, the SEZ, which are going on or taking place in Uganda, and the agricultural transformation clusters, ATCs, which are going on in Kenya. So the other research study is ongoing in this category is the studies on entrepreneurship ecosystem development, and these ones are going on in Mali, Togo, Ghana, Guinea, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe. And the objective here is to identify the determinants of entrepreneurship, characteristics of entrepreneurs, and examine the factors that affect entrepreneurial success in those countries. So the focus here is opportunity on entrepreneurs. So the third ongoing project under research studies, we have the Nigeria Innovation Program, and the objective of the assignment is to conduct a detailed feasibility study that will assess the adequacy and operational effectiveness of key proposed interventions. That is for the NIP, the Nigeria Innovation Program. And then lastly, on the last component of the enabling environment, we have 4 projects which are at preparatory level. And these projects are in Mali, one in Mali, another one in Ghana, Guinea, and Botswana. As it was explained earlier, under enabling environment, we are working with different governments or government departments to help support or promote enabling environment where MSMEs can thrive comfortably. So in total, as you can see, there's a package of almost $15 million, which have been committed or used in this project. And so far, our track record shows we have had an influence on 16 projects. So we can move on to the next slide, which is the impact and example of successful operations of the fund. It has been mentioned that we have been working with Tony Elemulu Foundation, and this, the output we have achieved so far, there are 1,000 youth entrepreneurs who are 636 males and 364 females who are selected across 13 African countries from 21 sectors. And these sectors, for example, are agriculture, education, transport and logistics, among others. And if they were trained successfully, they completed the 1 year, they were able to access small grants of at least $5,000 each. And the intention here was to support them to start or expand their businesses. So among the results achieved by the Tony Elemulu Foundation, some of the MSMEs have been able to expand their businesses. Some have started their businesses, and we have witnessed a few cases here and there where some jobs have been created. We are going to see an example of that as we move on. So the other program that explains our success operations is the African Youth Agripreneurs Forum. And this is where we had 20 youth agripreneurs who are from 14 African countries. They were trained on how to run successful businesses. They did their pitching, and they made very good presentations to investors. And in the process, some received cash awards of between $6,000 to $25,000. And of course, they were to go through a 1-year-long mentoring process. So the outcomes achieved or the success of these operations have been, some have reported increased in earnings, others have been an element of increase in the staff, others have increased their turnover, or there is an element of business growth, but we haven't gone to the ground yet to know how have these successful operations been affected by COVID-19. But so far, as time goes on, we are going to also find out how they have managed to survive through the pandemic as time moves on. So a certain proportion of these entrepreneurs have improved their manufacturing facilities, and they are looking forward to certification and licenses to support their operations. So as we move on to give examples of our successful operations in the next slide, you will see this is a very, very good example of one of the beneficiaries through the Tony Elumelu Foundation of the achievement of what they have done with the grants received. This is a case study or a very good example of what has happened in Kenya. An entrepreneur has been able to set up an information and communication center, received means established from the grants, and among the good things is that 3 direct jobs have been created by this entrepreneur. And beyond that, the center is supporting community members to access online services such as filing tax returns, application and renewal of business permits, things like driver's licenses also, and offering other secretarial services within the community. And this is very good because the access of online services have been very useful to the community in a response to the government of Kenya, encouraging the use of online services as a measure to curb the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. So the good also, the center has been offering IT and digital literacy training to the youth in the community. So you can see this is a very good example of an entrepreneur who has fitted perfectly to respond to COVID-19 measures and offer online services to that. So we have another very good successful entrepreneur, and this is in Nigeria. And these ones were able to expand their business of poultry production. They deal with poultry. Beyond packaging and selling of poultry, they are looking forward, or maybe selling fresh vegetable eggs and organic manure. They're looking forward to expand the production of processed eggs and then converting that into powder eggs and fresh sachet eggs. So this is a very good example of whereby they can be able to prolong the shelf life of an egg, and this contributes to reduction of food loss and food wastage. So that is the good response that the fund has achieved, or some of the good examples the fund has achieved. In our next slide, you can see that this was a picture or a session of the AgriFitch event of 2019, where some of the successful, entrepreneurs were able to receive their cash prizes. And you can see they were distributed, some from South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and they all deal with agriculture and the different types of prizes they got from that event. So this has been very encouraging and very productive within the time the fund has been in operation, and we look forward to present more successful operations in the other coming projects. Thank you, Henriette.
Thank you, Charles. So this will be the last slide. It's just to give you an overview of the team. So the fund is implemented and overseen by the Jobs for Youth team. So all the staff which is within the team is supporting and contributing to the fund. And they are both based in headquarters in Abidjan, but also in country offices. So we have our Director of Department, Martha Fury, Tapera Muzira, the coordinator of the Jobs for Youth strategy, who spoke at the beginning of the presentation. And I just gave a few examples of names of colleagues who've been very involved with the fund, but anyone in the Jobs team is very supportive. And then we have a task manager who is being recruited right now, who will be part of the Jobs team, but also the main focal point for the Trust Fund team. in charge of the resource mobilization and general oversight. And then we have a team of consultants who are fully dedicated to the fund. So the trust fund manager, who is myself, in charge of the planning and day-to-day activities. We are recruiting a portfolio officer because right now we have a couple of projects ongoing and about to start, so we need help to oversee all those projects. If all goes well, it will start on Monday, so we're really looking forward. We have Charles, the M&E officer. We are about also to recruit a communication officer who will start in October. And finally, we have Aida, who is already on board to help on procurement and admin. And these two positions, communication officer and procurement and admin, are shared with the Innovation Lab that I mentioned before. So you can see our email. Don't hesitate to reach out to Charles, Aida, and myself. And we also have a generic email, the YEI@fdb.org, for any request about the fund. We monitor it regularly, so don't hesitate to contact us also through that email. And with that, we finish, and we'll open it to questions.
Thank you, Henriette. That was very very good and very helpful in terms of understanding the fund. We have a couple questions that have been put forward. I'll pose them. You can also look at them on the Q&A piece. But the first question is, what type of projects can be funded under the Enabling Environment window?
Yes, so I think we've been a little bit answering that question before. But basically, that's the one where we work with government, technical assistance, and with country offices. And so an example, for example, in Guinea, they have been drafting this national employment policy with a specific section on youth employment policy. And they have it beautifully drafted, but they lack resources to implement it. And in particular, they needed resources to organize workshops throughout the country to tailor it to specific sector and have a national employment policy for agriculture, for handicraft, for other industries. We've been working on a technical assistance project with them to enable them to implement those workshops and really have an operation plan for this national employment policy to be a reality and to be implemented. So because we have a short time frame, the goal here is really to have countries who have policies designed, but they have a hard time to implement them. We know it takes time between the draft and the actual implementation in the field. And so here we can help accelerating the implementation of those policies in countries.
Okay, next question is, please provide example of research studies funded to get a sense of what that category. And at the same time, there's a question about pourquoi les pays de l'Afrique centrale ne sont pas éligibles à ces deux initiatives.
Okay, so shall I answer in French for questions in French? I don't know if translation is available.
Translation is not available, but maybe you can. I'm assuming since they're listening to the presentation, they probably speak English, so you can answer in English.
Okay, good. So I'll start with the first one. I think again, also we gave a few examples. So the first one is entrepreneurship ecosystem studies that we are about to launch in 6 countries. And so here really we want to look at what is the challenge for youth in those countries to develop their own business. And we want it to be very practical. So it's not like a theoretical study. They will really go in the country to understand what is the challenge specific to each country. And then the country office of the bank will be involved, the government, and we'll try to make recommendation to develop a few projects that then can be funded also by the fund or by other source of funding to apply those recommendations. So what are the challenges, why youth are struggling in the country to develop their business, and then what can be done in the country to help. And so the example I provided below, it could be tax exemptions, it could be status of entrepreneurs, better access to internet, things like that. Sometimes it's also linking, the public tender, give access, preferential access to SMEs for public tenders, and how can we build their capacity to access those public tenders. About Afrique Centrale, it's not like it's not eligible, but donors really want to be able to measure impact. And if you work as a level of Africa, it's difficult really to capture your impact. So that's why they ask us to focus for now on a set of countries so that we can implement all the 3 pillars together in those countries to really make a difference, acting at the enabling environment, directly supporting SMEs, really strengthening the ecosystem. So the goal really is to focus in those countries to be able to make an impact. Now, like I said before, if a country in Central Africa that is fragile make a very strong case to get funding and have a CSP with a pillar on human development with approval of donors, we could consider the case. And also it's possible that this target country evolve in the future. We have until 2025. But for now, we had to choose how to start focusing with the agreement of our donors.
Okay, Henriette, next is a question about your outcomes page, page 11. These are the predicted outcomes in advance using number from similar figures or measured during monitoring. So I think the question is it predicted or is it measured during your monitoring?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the page. I'm not sure if I am on the right slide. So basically, outcomes are predicted. I mean, when we start designing the fund, we have a theory of change. And so we believe the activity we fund will contribute to reach those outcomes that are presenting here. And then for each outcomes, we have indicators. And so actually, maybe I should have let Charles answer this one, but maybe it will complement what I've started to say. And so those indicators are prediction, but we are basing our prediction on existing studies. So for example, for the how many jobs can we create, we'll use previous projects that have supported MSMEs and use tendency. We observe that the SME can maybe create 1 or 2 jobs in the next year, for example. Same for business survival. Literature can tell you that 60% of MSMEs and startups will fail in the first 3 years after creation. Our goal is to decrease that rate of failure. So we use existing evidence and then we base our targets based on this evidence. And then each year we'll monitor our indicators, and so little by little we become more precise in the type of targets we can have. But maybe Charles wants to add something on this.
Well, I don't have much to add, but as you have indicated, our theory of change has got the 3 levels, at output, outcomes, and impact. And therefore, the outcomes that we have, also remember, they have been informed by what we have obtained from the Jobs for Youth in Africa, strategy. So there is that synchronization or alignment of what the fund is doing and what the strategy wants to achieve. So what we can say, there is no prediction, or what we can try to do is now maybe predict the target advised by the literature and the activities that we are doing. But the results, the short results achieved so far, this is the data that has been obtained from our implementing partners through the constant conversation we have been having with them and through the monitoring activities that we have in place. Thank you, Henriette.
Okay, why don't we take a couple more questions so that we leave time for the next presentation as well. There's a question about, yes, Tapera.
Just as the other questions are coming in, I just wanted to add a couple of things in addition to what my team has put forward. The first is that you can use the trust fund to leverage bank operations. So it's not necessarily that you apply to the trust fund to use the trust fund resources directly. You could actually use them as part of the design of a bank operation. So, for example, if you have a PBO, supporting a policy-based operation, you could use enabling environment resources of the trust fund to beef up and to target better young people and young women who may benefit from that. And then also when it comes to research, for example, the special agro-industrial processing zones done by our agricultural department, they were able to use the trust fund to prepare a very large-scale bankable project for Uganda and Kenya. So these are the type of strategic uses of the trust fund that we would like to see more and more, and maybe less of small activities and small projects here and there. We want to leverage bank resources for bigger and better operations that target young people. So thanks very much.
Okay. Listen, there's a lot of questions coming in, which says that there's a lot of interest. There's also 100+ people on this webinar today, which shows a lot of interest. So what we're going to have to do is probably send some of the questions to you and the people that asked them, and maybe you can respond to them afterwards. But there's just one last question then, which is a question around challenges. What are the things that what are the challenges that you're currently facing? And obviously looking at your goals, which is 25 million jobs created, that's a lot of jobs, right? And 50 million young people equipped. So can you give us a sense of if you're still comfortable with those numbers and what challenges that you have faced and or lessons learned as you have been implementing the fund?
So to clarify, the goal of 25 millions of jobs and 50 millions of young people equipped is at the level of the Job for Youth in Africa strategy. It's not the goal of the YEI and DTF. I don't know if Tapera, you want to address this or if I should reply.
Yes, that's right, Henriette. Remember, I said that the trust fund works in basically 3 ways to keep things simple. The first is leveraging every bank operation to maximize the employment outcome of every dollar we invest in every bank operation. So right across all the complexes, we are working. We are more than 15 people in the jobs team. We are spread at HQ and in the regions. And we work very closely with our regional offices and country offices to result better when it comes to job creation and bank operations. So today, before COVID, we were somewhere around 8 million jobs already facilitated by the bank. And then the second aspect we talked about is leveraging, flagship programs. So you have read a lot of the Coding for Employment program. You have read a lot about the Enable Youth program, the various operations, etc. We call those flagship programs that we also support and technically and with the resources to scale up impact on young people. And then the trust fund falls under part of our investment category. Only that it's a grant vehicle, so it provides grants. So it makes a contribution to the strategy overall, but the overall bank group targets are not necessarily the same targets for the trust fund. And then Roderick, to your question, are we still confident with the target? We were better confident before COVID. Now, of course, there's been huge losses of jobs, and we're trying to reassess to see exactly how serious that has been, what we have lost in terms of the gains that we had made. And we are going to undergo a review of the strategy next year, the midterm review of the bank group Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy will be next year. So that's when we'll be able to really give you the answer to that question as we enter that midterm evaluation. But just to signal that already with COVID-19, there's been huge losses in terms of the gains that we had made. But nonetheless, we think that it's still possible to make an incredible effort to get to those types of targets.
Excellent, thank you.
I don't know if I have 3 minutes to talk about specific challenge of the fund.
Yes, go ahead, Henriette.
Yeah, maybe to complement, because I know also for good practices, like talking about like concrete challenge we face in terms of operations. So for example, yeah, with the COVID, you know, one of the activity we found is training and capacity building of SMEs. So obviously with all the constraint and social distanciation, it was difficult to be able to fund training. But the accelerator and incubators have been very fast as companies to be able to move to remote operations. And so now we see more and more remote training. They've developed applications and online tools to be able to keep building capacity of young entrepreneurs despite the social distancing and the constraints of COVID-19. So this was very encouraging. Now, in terms of operation, maybe one challenge I can mention is the fact that the ESOs, the Enterprise Support Organization, have very different profiles. Some of them are non-for-profit, such as NGOs or foundation, and others can be for-profit, such as consulting firms or incubators that are for-profit. And so in terms of bank guidelines and procedures, you would address differently how to fund for-profit or non-for-profit organizations. So that's something that we had to understand, and we are still seeing how can we best address this challenge to have a very diverse variety of potential beneficiaries, and we have to adapt our guidelines and procedures depending on the nature of the beneficiary. So that's the type of operational challenge we're facing. But yeah, I see there are so many other questions, so we'll be very happy to answer them by email.
Henriette, just even before you go, I mean, there is a question about increasing access to finance for youth-led startups is a key objective of the fund. What is your strategy and what activities are you planning to fund to mobilize resources from financiers willing to support this segment, i.e. business angel associations, impact, or philanthropic investors? Is that a focus and a strategy of the fund? Yeah, so one of the things is we cannot provide loans or invest directly. We can only provide grants, but what we can do is to decrease the risk. So that we've been doing with AGF by building the capacity of young entrepreneurs and their business, then the bank will be more willing to lend to them. We are also providing small grants. We're providing technical grants to those entrepreneurs to grow their business. And so this again can decrease the risk for the bank to invest in them because they are already able to manage a small fund to strengthen their business. And we can also help, for example, business angels and investment funds. They spend a lot of time and resources identifying potential business and startups they can fund. So where we're helping is providing technical assistance to those investment funds to build the capacity of the business. Sometimes it takes a year before they are eligible for investment. So that's where we can have a role. And finally, for example, AGF is working directly with the bank to help them design financial products specific for youth. For example, which require less collateral. So by working with the bank who are a bit shy to work with a young business, we can also help increasing access to finance. So there is a number of ways, mostly by decreasing the risk and reducing the cost of identifying business to fund. That's where we can have a role. Yeah. And listen, final question, just to close things out. Any thoughts, vision on the next stage, past the grant phase? And
Roderick, I will take that one.
To be able to enhance the fund's sustainability?
Yeah, let me take that one. But before I come to just a few additions on the challenges, because I think those are also very important in terms of lessons and good practices. There are challenges with thresholds. These are being addressed in the new trust fund policy that the bank is putting in place. I think we were amongst the trust funds that were consulted in that policy. And then it is going a long way to address some of the threshold issues to allow smoother operations of trust funds. The other issue is our operational guidelines. Initially, of course, they were not really very clear. And so we are redoing the operational guidelines to make sure that we cover some of the lessons that we've learned from an operation side on ensuring a more efficient and effective operation regarding these particular trust funds. So we can have a discussion on those challenges for those others that want to follow after this conversation. In terms of looking forward past this fund, if you look at our donors, they are all capable of actually increasing their contribution into this trust fund. I think what they are looking for are results. So we will be preoccupied in demonstrating the results that this trust fund can generate, on its own and also in leverage with bank operations. So that is going to be our focus, because we think that the stakeholders that we have on board are quite capable of actually replenishing this trust fund to become a very significant part of bank resources. They are some of the major stakeholders of the bank, if you look at them. So we will not be looking for additional donors. We will be focusing on results and disbursements to make sure that we are able to build a very strong case for a much larger fund that is able to catalyze change. That's one side. And then secondly, like I said, this is only the grand side, a grand vehicle of the strategy. We are also working very closely with other departments on looking at this issue of access to finance, particularly for startups and micro enterprises. So you will be hearing also quite a lot about youth entrepreneurship investment banks that the president has talked about. We are part of the group that's actually thinking through about how to tackle that issue going forward. So that will combine both the investment side and the grant side. And we will also look at some of the most innovative ways to deal with this issue of startups and micro enterprises. As you know, they struggle not only in terms of, let's say, the value of cash flows, but the value of assets to be able to get normal bank credit. So we have to find creative ways to do this, but also not just from a grant side, but from an investment side. So that's the future. So the fund should not be looked at in isolation. It should be seen as part of a menu of interventions that are leading to the implementation of the bank group Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy. Thanks very much, Roderick, for this fantastic.
No, thank you. That's a very good context, Tapira. And Henriette and Charles, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, with that, I'm going to ask Joseph Kaiser from the Fund for African Private Sector Assistance to sign on. The Fund for African Private Sector Assistance, better known as Fappa, is located in the finance division, and Joseph Kaiser is the coordinator of that fund. Is going to present to us the work that Fappa is doing. Joseph is no stranger to the bank. He's been here for a number of years, and prior to the bank, spent 20 plus years as a private sector and SME consultant. So, Joseph, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Roderick. I hope you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, you're coming through well.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. As I've already been introduced, my name is Joseph Kaisa, and I work with the FIS department, responsible for coordinating the Fund for African Private Sector Assistance. So I'm going to take you through briefly what we are doing at Fappa. And I have a proposed structure for the presentation. We'll do a trust fund overview to start with. We'll look at the donors, the partners, the objectives, the areas of intervention, the beneficiaries, how do you access the trust fund, how is the trust fund governed, what has been achieved in terms of track record, what's the impact, and introduce to you briefly the team. As overview, you've already been told that the trust fund name is the Fund for African Private Sector Assistance. This was, inception date was in 2006. The current trust fund size is 99 million. The target size at the time of starting the fund was 200 million. So now it is about halfway to the target size. The objective of the fund is to support the implementation of the bank's private sector development strategy. Areas of intervention are in line with the pillars of the private sector development strategy, that is creating an enabling environment, strengthening of financial systems, building competitive infrastructure, promoting the development of SMEs, and promoting trade. The fund mainly issues grants, and this is mainly through technical assistance and capacity building. Minimum size of the grant is 1 million. There are a few exceptions, but normal disbursement is up to a maximum of 1 million. In terms of donors, there are mainly three, which is the bank, the government of Japan, and the government of Austria. Lifespan, the Fappa, as I've told you, has been around since 2006, and it operates on a renewable basis. So the fund is renewed every 5 years. I think the second 5 years are coming to the end later this year. And so after the end of this year, it will be renewed for another 5 years. So we'll go a little bit in detail on each of those issues that have been indicated in the overview. As already indicated, that the fund was launched in 2006. It is important to note that Fappa is part of the Enhanced Private Sector Assistance, in short, EPSA initiative, which was initially a partnership of the government of Japan. And the fund was transformed into a multilateral trust fund in 2010 with the interest of Austria. Just for context, EPSA components, there are 4 EPSA components. Initially, there were 3. That is the Accelerated Co-Financing Facility for Africa, which is a multi-billion co-financing facility. This is mainly with Japan. Loans for non-sovereign operations for NSL. And then, of course, the issue for discussion today, which is the Fund for Private Sector Assistance. And until recently, that was last year, a 4th component of EPSA is the Private Sector Investment Finance Facility, which gives loans directly to the private sector. The ACFA is co-financing mainly for sovereign operations, and NSL, these are loans that come to the bank from Japan as part of the EPSA initiative. Now, objective of Fappa. I've given a very broad objective, saying that Fappa provides untied grants for technical assistance and capacity building for private sector development projects. The objective is to enhance the bank's ability to be more active in upstream phases of project preparation cycle in order to reinforce the quality of the bank's pipeline of private sector transactions. Another objective is to promote innovative programs that specifically support micro, small enterprises, including the provision of seed capital and for startups and business incubators and so on and so forth. What are the areas of intervention? In the overview, I mentioned about the pillars, which is enabling environment, promoting trade, etc. The donors however, have some very specific priority areas, and these are SMEs, this is agriculture, quality infrastructure, and energy. It doesn't mean that other areas are not considered, but these are given priority in terms of processing by the donors. Beneficiaries. Now, we've not indicated very specific beneficiaries, and this is intentional because Fappa is quite flexible. It deals with government, it deals with private sector. So the bottom line is involvement in private sector development. So it doesn't matter whether it's a government or a government agency, a business association, a private entity, a private enterprise, so long as it is involved in private sector development, it qualifies to be eligible to benefit from Fappa. So that's why the question is left. What is important is that we do a background check on those recipients and beneficiaries in terms of human resource and institutional capacity. Is the organization that is applying for resources from Fappa, does it have the human resource and the institutional capacity to be able to implement the project that is going to be approved? What is the experience that they have? What is the track record on fiduciary and social responsibilities? So there is need for assurance that the funds granted will be used for intended purpose in an economical and efficient manner. That is the bottom line. Otherwise, as regards as recipients, beneficiaries, they go across the board, both in government and private sector. The bank rules, of course, and procedures are always applicable within that context of the beneficiaries taking advantage of the resources of Fappa. How do we access the trust fund? The initial document that is submitted for consideration is the preliminary evaluation note, in short, a PEN. And this is normally submitted to the Fappa Secretariat. The Fappa Secretariat normally would conduct an initial discussion, preliminary discussion, and then if the project is found to be meeting the criteria for financing, then the PEN is presented to the Fappa Technical Committee for initial clearance and approval, and being given a go-ahead to develop a full-blown proposal. So after the PEN has been approved, then of course the team, which normally is a bank team, Fappa doesn't deal directly from external applicants. External applicants have to go through a bank unit, either through the country office or through any department at headquarters or regional offices. So they're the ones who submit the application. So the preparation of a technical assistance request becomes, of course, the next stage. And this is initially presented to the country team for review. And if the country team clears the technical assistance request, then it comes back to the technical committee. It comes to the technical committee, of course, with a project issue list that has been produced by the country team for final clearance by the technical committee before it is finally submitted to the oversight committee, which is a committee made up of all the donors. That is the bank, which is the government of Japan and the government of Austria. They're the ones who do the final approval and before the project can go into pre-implementation activities. Now, in cases where the application is more than 1 million, the project then has to go to the board for approval. So after approval, then of course you go through the pre-implementation activities. That means signing of the grant agreement and having the project effective. And then of course disbursement can start through implementation until the project is completed and necessary completion steps are taken in terms of project completion report, audits, etc. Now, to be able to access these funds, the projects are of course evaluated, and they are, I've presented just a few samples of some of the evaluation criteria that is considered. First and foremost, the project has to be in alignment with the bank's private sector development strategy. It has to be in alignment with the high fives, the 10-year strategy, the country strategic paper, and other relevant strategies of the bank, depending on the subject matter of the proposal. The project has to be in relationship, there must be a relationship with the bank's lending activities. Reason for this is, as we saw in the objectives, that Fappa is intended to deepen the impact of bank operations. So that's why it's important that there's a relationship either with an ongoing project. Of course, the project can be a standalone, but so long as there's a potential for a future in the bank, it is considered and is taken into consideration. Another consideration during evaluation is the capacity of the originator, whether he has the capacity to implement the project. Does he have the ownership? Does he have the commitment? Is there a buy-in of the grant? Now, commitment normally is through, for example, co-financing. Is the grantee willing to put in some money to demonstrate commitment? There is no specific percentage that is required of that, but these are some of the issues that are looked out for. And it comes on a case-by-case basis, depending on what kind of grantee it is. There has demonstrable, measurable, catalytic impact on private sector development in Africa. As we said initially, the objective is to support the implementation of the private sector development strategy. So whatever project is going to be approved by Fappa, it must demonstrate that indeed it's going to have that impact, it's going to be catalytic, and we have a way to measure it to ensure that it is having impact on the private sector development. Location and balance is a consideration. All of African countries in the region, of course, qualify, but it is important to avoid concentration in one specific area of the continent. Currently, of course, there's a bit of concentration in West Africa, and there's little concentration of Central Africa. So quite a lot of projects from Central Africa now being considered and being given priority in order to have that balance in terms of projects. No more size of the proposal is of course 1 million, but of course exceptions exist, and it's up to the technical committee to evaluate whether the proposal is an exception that should guarantee to have a grant of over 1 million and thus go to the board for approval. Governance. Fappa is embedded within the bank structures. So Fappa is governed in accordance with the bank rules, regulations, and policy guidelines. Fappa doesn't have a separate governance structure from what is in the bank. So as it is in FIST, it is managed by, oversight is given by the director of FIST and the manager of FIST. And of course, since it is under FIVP and the vice president for finance. So the structure is embedded within the bank structures, and everything that is applicable to the bank in terms of governance, in terms of sanctions, in terms of policy becomes applicable to Fappa. What is the track record? So far, as we already indicated, that donors have contributed up to 94 million. When I was giving the introduction in the overview, I gave it as 99 because Fappa reinvests the resources that it has. So through this reinvestment, there has been, of course, income that has been earned, and the resources for Fappa have gone up to 99 million, which is close to 100 million. But actual contributions are 94.5 from the donors. Now, this is regularly replenished by the donors. For example, in 2019, Japan replenished again and contributed an additional 5 million to Fappa, which is something that Japan is one of the biggest, it is the biggest contributor to Fappa. And it regularly, in terms of every year, provides additional funds depending on how fast or the utilization of the resources. To date, sorry about that. So to date, Fappa has approved 85 projects, that is since its founding, and 9 projects were cancelled. They don't contribute to the 85. Of the 85 projects, 51 projects have been completed. So currently, Fappa has 34 ongoing projects. The average size is about 850,000 US dollars, and the funds currently available for commitment is about $26 million. In terms of track record, we are in the process of compiling and documenting results from Fappa projects. We are working in collaboration with PINS to make sure that results from Fappa projects are documented and they're entered into the technical assistance platform, which is a platform which is found on the bank applications. So this is just a sample because we're in the process of entering a lot of results. These are some of the samples of the results that are being realized from Fappa projects. They are normally tracked based on core indicators of the bank. For example, we track permanent jobs that are created, and out of 15 projects that have so far entered on the technical assistance platform, there have been 279,847 jobs that have been created. SMEs that have been financed out of 16 projects are 404,887. In terms of financial inclusiveness, there have been 3 projects which have enabled new depositors to financial institutions. And these new depositors are 270,223. There have been low-income clients who have been served for the first time again, as a result of financial inclusion, and these are 1,186,977. SMEs that have been trained out of 23 projects are 20,895. Now, as I said, these are just examples of what Fappa projects are achieving. Others are really individual achievements, and I've picked up just two. There was a project on Africa Domestic Bond Fund, which Fappa funded in terms of preparing countries to have local currencies onto the domestic bond funds. And due to the preparation of this project, the bank was able to invest seed equity capital of 25 million. So as I said, these are just examples. The examples are many, but I just picked up some few in order to demonstrate the impact that is being realized as a result of Fappa projects. Impact, again, that is an area that we've started tracking. What is the impact that is coming out of the Fappa projects? There's one project that I'm giving as an example, which is the Ghana SME Business Linkage Project. This is a project that was financed by Fappa some 4 years ago, and it has featured in quite a lot of local newspapers in Ghana. And through the 4 years, as you see, what some of the media where it has been indicated, it has, after 4 years, it has accelerated growth of SMEs through three pillars, mainly access to skills, access to finance, and access to markets. Just as a bit of a background, Fappa invested $1 million into this project. As a result, it had a catalytic effect. We talked about the catalytic effect in some of the evaluation, and it crowded in an additional close to $3 million. So that the project became a $4 million, mainly for capacity building and for the SMEs, so that they could participate into the business linkage that was designed by the bank. To date, the impact of this project has been tremendous. One of the components of that project was to establish a platform, which is called the African Partner Pool, where multinational companies could be able to advertise tenders and have SMEs access those tenders. To date, as the end of Q2, there have been $1.8 billion worth of tenders that have been published on the APP, the African Partner Pool. Out of that 1.8, the SMEs that have gone through the program have been able to win about $153 million. These are SMEs that initially couldn't access those multilateral tenders, but through the capacity building of the program, they've been able to access those tenders. One of the components, again, was access to finance, and through the projects, SMEs have been able to be facilitated and have been able to access up to $2 million in terms of finance from partnering banks to this project. Jobs created have been 38,000. This is a figure that I got just a few hours ago. And local suppliers that have been trained in business skills, about 354. Total value of deals that have been retained in local economy is about 161 million. Why are we talking of value retained in the economy? Before these SMEs were capacitated, the multilaterals, for example, could not get suppliers in Ghana. There are examples of where simple things like printing, they had to print to contract printers from Europe, but through the business linkage program, these SMEs have been capacitated. They've worked with companies like Canon, and they've been able to build their capacity. And that those funds, which were initially being contracted to Europe and other countries, are now retained in the local economy in Ghana. So that is the impact. Just one example of a product of how much 1 million from Fappa can achieve. And of course, there are lots and lots of multiplier effects that cannot be demonstrated. So that is Fappa, and that is what Fappa is doing. Fappa is part of FIST. It is housed by FIST, and it is part of EPSA. Oops, sorry. It is part of EPSA, and we have a team that works on Fappa. Of course, there is the FIST management, that is the manager of FIST and the director. Then there is a technical team involving myself as currently coordinating Fappa. There is Kazuo Kojima, who is a technical advisor that works as part of the team. There is Famien, who is part of the EPSA team. And there is Barry Mamadou, who is the EPSA focal point. There is, of course, an extensive team that supports us in terms of administration, in terms of data entry, that we are not able to put here, but who are part of the team. So that is the presentation. Roderick, I think I can field some questions, and then we'll see how we continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I don't know, can you see the questions that are on the question and answer page? I'll go ahead and ask a couple, the first ones. The first one is what is the approved initial lifespan of a Fappa funded project? Can you hear me, Joseph? You're on mute, Joseph.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So the first one was, what is the approved initial lifespan of a Fappa funded project? So I guess the question is, what's the maximum amount of time that you can fund a project for?
Okay. I hope you're not being interrupted by the phone. Can you hear me?
Maybe you can switch off the phone.
Okay, apologies for that.
Okay. While Joseph is gone, for everyone who's on the line, let me just say that as a public service announcement, that anyone who's listening, that's a trust fund manager or user of trust funds, please do take the trust fund accreditation course, which is certainly required for task managers and extremely helpful for those who are going to be users. It has an immense amount of information on the trust fund portfolio, processes, systems, and guidance on a number of things that relate to trust funds. So, all right, Joseph.
Hello, how are you? Apologies
Good.
about that. That is working from home.
That's okay. So, lifespan of a Fappa funded project.
Okay. We don't have a fixed lifespan. From experience, we've had projects that have gone as far as 8 years, and we've had projects that have been as short as 1 year. So it really depends on what the project is, what is it trying to achieve, how long will that capacity be built for each specific project. Otherwise, on average, most of the projects are about 3 years.
About 3 years. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Next couple of questions are, when do you usually do a call for proposal? If indeed you do call for proposals, I'm not sure that's valid. And then the second is, how long does it take from submission until the project is funded? I think you answered both of those in the presentation, but maybe you can just repeat the answers.
Okay. When is the usual time of call for proposal? We don't call for proposals. As we say that Fappa is normally linked to bank operations. So as the need arises, we address whatever requests that we have. Normally it is on a first come, first served basis, depending on the resources, depending on the priorities of the donors, depending on the priorities, if there is need for a balance in terms of the region, depending on, so there are a number of factors that are taken into consideration. So what we do is to have that Fappa Technical Committee normally meets once a month throughout the year in order to take consideration of the projects. So those are the variables that we put in consideration, but there is no call for proposal. And then the second part of the question was how long? How long, again, depends on the task, on the project team. We have project teams that work quickly from pen clearance up to TAR approval. We have project teams due to various reasons that take 1 year from the time a pen is approved up to the time that they are ready with a technical assistance request. And there could be other factors. Just yesterday, we were considering a project that has taken at least 2 years from the time the pen was cleared, because they had to have a number of things in place. So when you're dealing with capacity building, you're dealing with technical assistance, there are a lot of variables that you are dealing with. So one jacket doesn't fit all. So each project is taken on a case-by-case basis, depending on the need, depending on what they are trying to address. Otherwise, on average, we could be talking about 6 months.
Okay. And any, is there a target in terms of women-owned SMEs? Is there a gender lens that you look at in terms of your projects? Joseph, that's a question.
Yeah, as we said, as I said initially, that whatever is applicable in terms of bank priorities and bank rules is applicable to Fappa. So yes, Fappa projects have a gender lens because the bank has a gender lens. When you look at our technical assistance request, actually it has a section, the template has a section which clearly requests how the project will take gender considerations in the project. And in terms of tracking.
Yeah, tracking.
In terms of tracking, we also track disaggregated data in terms of the beneficiaries who have benefited. We try to see how many women have benefited from each project, or youth.
Okay. And then there's a question, just a clarification in terms of, is the 1 million a minimum or is it a maximum in terms of the amount that you will finance?
Okay. The 1 million is a maximum under normal circumstances. But again, normally it's, I think there's a tendency always to start with the money in mind. I think we should always be starting with the activity to be conducted. The activity is the one which determines the money. So in terms of capacity building, this is money really for paying for consultation. It's not about buying goods. And there's so much we can pay to a consultant to perform a specific task. So 1 million is a maximum under normal circumstances. But as I already indicated in the presentation, there are exceptions that could go beyond 1 million. But what should be expected, as I said, this is for capacity building. We are going to be paying consultants. Most times, the money should be much less than 1 million. There are projects which I think normally we start with the figure in mind. They say 1 million, so you want to apply for 1 million. The reality is that most projects end up not utilizing all the resources. They have 300,000, 400,000 left over, and then they have to look for activities to be able to utilize that money. So currently with discussions with task managers, we are seeing a lot of projects which are 350,000, 500,000, 400,000, and we even had some for 200,000. So start with the activity, how much is needed to spend on that activity. Then we can talk about the money afterwards.
Okay, good answer, Joseph. There's a question about, do you always require counterpart funding from government?
In my presentation, I indicated that one of the areas of evaluation was the commitment of the grantee. And one of the areas that the grantee can show commitment is to put his resources to the project. So that's the big consideration in terms of evaluation. So there is no specific amount that the Fappa guidelines provide in terms of how much the co-financing should be. But the amount that is given to the technical committee, to the oversight committee, to the Fappa secretariat, and all those evaluating the project, how much is put in indicates the commitment that the grantee has and could ease the evaluation of the project, as opposed to somebody who would, an organization that would put in much less.
Okay. Let's a couple more questions, Joseph. As a multi-donor trust fund, how do you manage issues related to earmarking? The second one is, what is the minimum amount a donor could contribute to join the fund? I think you have some people out there that want to fundraise for you, Joseph.
That's good news. Yeah, we need many people to join in. Of course, Japan has done a tremendous job over the years, but we are seeing a lot of interest in Fappa. The applications are going over the roof. So those sentiments are very welcome. So I don't understand the first part of the question in terms of earmarking. You'll help me to understand it, but I'll, in the meantime, answer the second part. What is the minimum amount a donor could contribute? I think there's no minimum. There's no minimum. I would have to go back to the guidelines and see and look at the multi-donor agreement, but I don't recall there being a minimum. But the least amount we have in terms of contribution to date is about USD 2 million.
Yeah, and some of that will be guided by trust fund, the policy, and again.
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
I'll just say there's no minimum now, but to be announced at a later date there may be. So
yeah, I would really have to go back on that. I'm not 100% sure. So okay. I'll look that up and probably we'll see what. So I didn't understand the first part of the question.
Yeah, and the first part was really about earmarking, and again, I don't think that does Japan have a particular area, industry, or sector that they are focused on, or they're just focused on anything that promotes private sector investment?
Okay. Before I answer that, I see somebody has assisted me in terms of earmarking for the benefit of all the participants. It says that the bank does not allow this, but in some cases, some donors really want their contribution to go to a specific area or country. Okay, now I understand. So earmarking was whether there's a lock-in or a designation of the amount. Yeah, so no, there is not. And as Emily, who has assisted me on this, the bank doesn't allow it. So
Okay.
the question in terms of, come again on the question that you had?
No, that's
The last
that
question.
was a question about earmarking, Joseph.
Okay,
It's from
there was
Emily.
another, yeah, okay.
And then there's a question, there's a comment with a question inside of it, just in terms of reporting. Do you think that reporting should kind of fit the fund as opposed to the bank's reporting schedule? So, you know, for example, the use of bank PCR template for completion reporting is, in my opinion, cumbersome, is what the person is saying. So should you not try and adapt that to the scope and objectives of the fund? So maybe this is someone who's used Fappa in the past and wants to comment on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think whatever the bank has put in place is put there for a purpose. You've picked the example of the PCR. I think it's about perception. Yes, we may say it is cumbersome, but at the end of the day, if a project has been performing, a project has been reporting regularly every quarter, it has been reporting on its outputs, on the outcomes, I think the reporting doesn't end up being that cumbersome. So, as I said, Fappa follows bank processes. I think there is no way to that. This is the reason why donors feel comfortable to be able to put funds in Fappa, that there is a strong governance structure in place. So, what really looks as cumbersome, if done appropriately, may not really look so. So I think, to me, my point of view, I think it is okay. There should be no reason for having two standards within the bank. You report separately for Fappa and then report separately for other processes.
Yeah. Listen, Joseph, just two more questions and then we will close things out. And before I go to this question, let me just ask you, what's the response been from Japan? I mean, obviously they're happy with the fund, but are there some things that they're particularly happy about in terms of the impact that Fappa has had within Africa generally, or even within the banks, the projects at the bank?
The fact that Japan continues to contribute every year to Fappa is a clear indicator that they're happy with what Fappa is doing. Some of the results, of course, I've shown you, and this is just on the surface in terms of what can be achieved. Soon we'll be able to document more and more stories that we'll be able to publish. But the fact that little that can be assumed to be little can have a tremendous impact. For example, the example of the SME program that I indicated is a demonstration of what can be achieved. So Japan, one, is happy of the record of, and I think also thinks we can do much more with Fappa. Currently, we are conducting some webinars in terms of debt sustainability. Debt sustainability is something that is so pertinent to Japan. And I think 29th, we shall be having a webinar. If I could do a little commercial and encourage all those That's here fine. to tune in. We'll be doing a webinar on debt sustainability. We're also doing other webinars with, we did another one through Fappa on the 23rd. We had one for Korea, for China, and for India in terms of introducing the financial products of the bank. So one, Japan is happy with what we are doing. Japan thinks we can do much more. And I think there is room to do much more.
Super. Listen, Joseph, thank you very much for that presentation. It was
Yeah.
very comprehensive.
If it is okay, there is one last question I see here.
Yeah, it's a question about lessons learned from Fappa projects, best, good practices on pins, or and stories on Fappa successes. I thought you answered it a little with the Ghana project, but
yes. I mean, I'll just finish with that one. Do you have access repository of lessons learned from Fappa? Yes, we are working on this. It is work in progress. As I told you, we have a technical assistance platform, and this is really to assist us managers. Sooner or later, it could be open to most bank staff, where for every project, lessons learned are recorded in print, such that somebody doesn't have to go to a hard copy. But for any projects that he wants to see, how did it perform, what were the results, it can easily be accessible and help in the design of new projects. So the repository is there, it's being worked on, and we hope it will be perfected in a few years to come. Thank you.
No, I think that that's something that is certainly needed across the bank, having good stories. And we certainly say that both the presentation that you gave about Fappa, as well as the presentation, the YEI Fund, the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Fund, you shared some very good stories and some good impact of your fund. So thank you to both teams. Henriette, thank you, Charles and Joseph. The next, just for everyone that's still online, the next presentation webinar is going to be on the infrastructure theme on the 6th of October at the same time. So we hope you tune in again. And again, thanks to all the speakers from today. We're signing off now.